What's up, everyone? We are back here with the Bouncing Back podcast. We have a great show lined up for you guys today. I'm one of your co-hosts, Wes McKnight, and I'm joined here with Jack Blackwell. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm good. It's another day. Glad to be back behind the mics, getting to talk to each other. And especially after the week we just had, I'm excited to get into that later down the line. It was very fun watching Sunday. I do have to make, you mentioned that disclaimer. We had an issue with some of the recording, some of the audio of that last podcast. I just want to touch in there while I have the opportunity. I do have a rotten dog. I love him to death. His name's Ace. He's a little boxer, lab mix, but he's something else. I'm excited to hear someone else's opinion. If that we get that opportunity later down the line, maybe bring someone on here. But yeah, so the reason I bring him up though is because during the last podcast, I don't know if anybody caught on to it, but he was barking in the background, and I didn't realize it, and I didn't go back and listen to the previous ones because he might have been barking then, but you might have heard him. So I just want to apologize for that. Just let everyone know Ace is just trying to get his voice out. He's probably being an asshole about something. He loves to chew on things and not listen to me. So it's always been fun, but I was thinking about it. I knew I wanted to say that at the beginning here, but it brought me back thinking when we were living together in Morgantown. Me, you, Amaret, and Austin, you had Thor with you, right?
Yep.
And Thor was a really cool dog, just in itself, fun dog to have around, very nice, all that. But Thor also had a pretty cool background, so I figured, maybe this would be a good chance to kind of bring it up. I'd be interested to hear a little more because I knew some things about Thor, but I didn't know it all. So I'd love to hear it, and I think it's a great opportunity to kind of hear about who Thor was and why we were lucky to have him around.
Yeah, like Jack alluded to. So yeah, I had a dog. It was actually started out as it's my wife's dog. Then of course started hanging around. For when we started dating, then of course we wanted to get married. His name was Thor. So Thor was pretty unique, but Jack spent a lot of time with him. I think he watched him multiple weekends when we went out of town, and it's kind of hanging around the house. But it sounds like he's the opposite of Ace. He was just like a real chill dog. I mean, he would just kind of hang out and just do
Exactly.
his thing.
The dog you would want when you wanted a dog. Yeah, that was Thor, not
Yeah,
Ace.
but he just laid around, big couch potato. But what's so interesting about him is he's actually the breed. He was a Greyhound. But not only was he just a Greyhound, which are their Greyhounds are typically race dogs, or can be a race dog. He did have a active or a past racing career, where he spent a lot of time racing actually. So he was adopted, I believe, the age of 3, straight from the racetrack. So he would actually race at the Wheeling Downs racetrack in Wheeling, West Virginia. And yeah, just a really cool dog. His name was Thor. It's interesting because they get tattoos in their ears when they're
Really?
racing. So yeah. Did you know that?
No, so the only thing I've seen for that, my parents adopted a dog not too long ago to kind of accompany the other dog they had adopted a few years before her. And she's an all white dog, but on her belly, we did realize she had a blue tattoo. And that was
Yeah.
the first time I'd seen that. So interested to hear. So do they tattoo them to distinguish when the owners aren't around and they're setting up for the race? What's the point of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's solely just the identification. So I think a lot probably goes into it. And I haven't did a whole lot of research on like the reason why. But I think a lot of it too is like so you get kind of in these different classes. All right, so not every dog's the same. Like obviously when you race and you're betting on them at the racetrack, they want the races to be pretty even. So they try to keep everyone grouped together. So they use the tattoos as a form of identification. I assume part of that is to make sure you're not just like throwing in some dog that's out of class to make a bet or skew kind of the results of what's going on. So it's mainly for that identification piece. He had 2 tattoos. So one was just kind of just a 4-digit number that was just an identification number in one ear, and then the other ear was actually um, it was his 61C. So it was the I need to make sure I can get this right.
What is that? The
6th month
class
of the
he ran
year.
in? Oh,
No, it was six month of the year. One was 2011, so he was born in 2011, and then C says that he was the third puppy out of his litter. So
interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was super cool, and I think that's like I said, it's just an easy way to identify him at the racetrack, or I mean, a lot of these breeders had like a bunch of dogs that were racing, like owners and stuff. So
Right.
making sure they can distinguish them between each other. But yeah, he had a. It's funny, you can take that number and you can search it actually, so you can look up
Really?
his race record, and he had quite a few wins. I mean, I'm sure
Hell yeah.
he won a lot of people some money, which is pretty cool. Uh, but yeah, Emmeret, my wife, adopted him at 3. He actually broke his leg in a race and got hurt, and then got retired after that. And then she adopted him, had him after that, all the way up to this past August, actually, where he or recently passed away,
Mm. Sorry to
just
hear
due to
about that.
old age, health issues. I mean, he was kind of crackling and popping around the house. He was 10 years old, and you got to think the amount of abuse he probably put on his body was pretty high back in his day. So he lived a good life, and now all we have is just a painted picture of Emmeret that Emmeret made of him hanging up on our wall. But yeah, he's a pretty good dog.
And I will say, it's a beautiful picture. It was well done. I actually, maybe I did know this, but because I've seen that picture, I did not know that she was the one who painted it.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. I
What?
I didn't even know a whole lot about dog racing. Before I didn't, to be honest, before Thor kind of came into the equation and into the house and everything. I didn't really know people race dogs, which is pretty funny to think about. And then when I learned about them briefly, I always thought it was only down in Florida. And so when
Mhm.
you said he was racing and wheeling, I just had to go on and look. And I didn't know you can't even do it anymore in Florida.
No,
So the
no, it was.
only yeah, the only
They
legal
recently
states that
stopped.
they're doing it now is Alabama, Arkansas, Iowa, Texas, and West Virginia. So you said they recently stopped, so it was Florida. Florida was a big part of that, right?
Yeah, it was just a couple of years ago they recently stopped racing in Florida, and it's definitely starting to die down. Which, to be honest with you, I have mixed feelings about that personally. I don't think overall these dogs are really abused necessarily. I wouldn't say that. I think a lot of times they live pretty good lives. I have heard some stuff as far as like or read some stuff about like drug use and stuff like that, where they might give them some different drugs to kind of help them out that probably isn't great for their body, and then obviously they don't live very long because of it. But the flip side to that is if you kind of let dog racing go away completely, I mean this awesome breed of dog, it kind of just goes away and gets polluted. I mean it's one of the only dogs you can go to and you can get a purebred dog for $200 if you want to adopt one. And I encourage anyone looking at dogs just to look up Greyhound, see if that's something you might be interested in. But the downside of getting rid of racing is I think you're going to lose some of that purebred
Oh,
the
certainly.
purebred dogs you have out there, and just kind of like the history behind them and how unique they are and stuff.
Well, yeah, at this point, I mean, they've been around, looking more into it. It's been around for so long. And I'm sure, like I said, I never grew up around it, but I'm sure the culture around it is pretty strong.
Yeah.
We'll get into this, I think, here in a little bit, just based off everything um, talking about Thor. But, I've seen just moving to Kentucky, the horse community and horse racing as a whole. Like I think this is very similar. You have these communities that are just really close. You have people who are at the track every weekend, stuff like that. It never was, back in Maryland when growing up, I never heard of anybody going to the racetrack. Maybe once or twice. But I'll be at, somebody's house and they'll just bring it up. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking about heading down to Churchill Downs or one of these other smaller tracks around here." So I think it would be actually I think it would be more harmful than good to completely shut these down. And I don't know a whole lot, I will say that. But from the sounds of it, I mean, I'm sure the dogs like getting out there and running fast and doing
Yeah.
all that. So
Yeah,
I'm certainly not against it.
I'm in the same boat, and I mean, ever the interactions I've seen from the owners and stuff. Like I said, I don't think they're being abused or anything like that. I think they're treated well, and a lot of times they usually like they don't. It's not like they're putting them down either. They get adopted, and I think they do a pretty good job of making sure they do get adopted. and kind of back out there after, and they're great pets. That's what's crazy is you wouldn't guess that because you get them out there and they almost look mean running around that track. All right, they just look real aggressive running around. They're big, muscular dogs. But dude, they're awesome pets. They're just couch potatoes. I mean, Thor would just lay
Yeah.
upside down every day on the couch, and that's all he'd do all day long.
Yeah, no, great dog. He was a fun guy to be around, and yeah, I mean, like I said, I think most people when they're looking for the dog, um, I'm sure there are situations that are different, but most people want a dog that kind of chills out, is around the house, good guy to sit next to on the couch, stuff like that. And from my experience with Thor and Greyhounds in general, they're pretty sweet. And I will. This is going to be probably the dumbest question I've ever asked, and now that I'm saying that, I probably shouldn't ask this, but Greyhounds, are they all gray? Like every one of them. Are there greyhounds that aren't gray?
Yeah, they're not all gray. No.
Okay. That doesn't shock me. Thor was mostly gray, although he did have kind of what do they call that?
He
The
was
stripe
brindle is
brindle, yeah.
what, yeah, technically called. But yeah, you can see like greyhounds, black greyhounds. Like there's a couple different colors, but
Mm.
no, they're not all gray.
Yeah,
Uh,
that I wish I didn't ask that.
Hey, so you kind of touched on it a little bit, just kind of speak about or continue to talk about racing. You talked about being in Kentucky and kind of being in that horse racing culture, and how there's a lot of I guess different people that are really into it, checking out the track and stuff. But what I think I mentioned on a previous episode, but something we've not talked about a whole lot, you actually own. I'm not going to spoil the whole story, but because I don't completely know it, but you own part of a racehorse. That is correct, right, Jack?
So I do. I own a percentage in actually not one but two racehorses now,
Okay.
which is it's something that's almost kind of taken over in my life. Not too crazy. It's something I got into with my father, and it's been a blast. So basically, what happened, like Wesley said, I moved down here to Kentucky, and you might imagine this, but horses are everywhere. I started out in Lexington, and saw some really cool stuff down there. I remember one day, actually, I think my parents and Amber came down to Lexington, and we all went to like a huge horse farm. It was crazy. They were showing off horses. We went into stables, massive stuff. It was really cool. But I moved up to Louisville, and in Louisville is Churchill Downs, and that's where the Kentucky Derby is, and that's probably the biggest horse racing event. I don't know what horse racing is like outside of the United States, but it's definitely the biggest horse racing event in the United States. Could be the world though, right? So Churchill Downs is this massive horse racing. I don't know what you call it, park or whatever it is, but it's beautiful. So when we moved up here, my parents came down another time, and we all went to Churchill Downs, and we went just to see races, right? And funny thing is we both went there, and I'm upset because I obviously had to take out cash before I went, right? Like I'd never been to a horse race. I've seen all these horses. It's so big in Kentucky and part of the culture. And so I knew I had to go there, and I had to bet on these horses. But it was funny because I went there and I went with like, I don't know, $200, thinking that was low. That wasn't, I didn't know what to expect. My dad pulls up when we went to place our first bets for the first races, pulls out like $20 and he puts down like a $2 bet and asks for 18 back. So I was so out of my league. I had no idea what was going on, but we spent the whole day at the track. I started to learn how it all works and, how horse racing works and how the betting on it works. It was really fun. Great day. So fast forward to my birthday in this past August, and my parents called me and they said, "Hey, we got you something for your birthday, and we think you're going to be excited about it." I asked them what it was, and it ended up being actually a percentage of a racehorse who at the time was racing up in New York, and it was kind of cool how it worked. So I got on board. It's this stable, this group. They're called Little Bluebird Stables, but there's tons of different ones out there. But you can look them up on Twitter and stuff like that. But basically, what they do is, they get a group of people to invest into a horse. They're usually the priority, whatever you call it, stockholder, whatever it is. They own the majority, but then they sell their percentages off of the other half, right? So essentially, that's what we did. Now, why this was so cool was because we really got like the whole experience with it up until this past week. And it will go on for longer, but basically when they put me into the contract, basically it was actually before we purchased the horse, collectively. And so the way these horse races work, and this is something I've learned, relatively recently, so might not be 100% spot on, but there's two kind of horse races. There are stake races, and then there's claiming races. So stake races are your bigger races. That's when there's just a prize pool of money, and these horses go out and they race, and the best horse wins the most amount of money, and so on and so forth. And that's what the Kentucky Derby is, stuff like that. Those are high stakes, and there are lower stakes ones than that, but nonetheless. And then you have claiming races, and the way that claiming races work, and this is a majority of your horse racing, is that when you place your horse in a claiming race, there's a certain claiming amount of money, right? And so let's say, we went in for this horse and we put him in a $15,000 claiming race. That means that anybody has the ability to place a bid for the horse for 15,000 and get that horse. So what it makes you do is not stay in the lower, races. If you're racing a horse in these claiming races, you don't want to go to a lower race where you think you'll definitely win, because what's going to happen is people before the race are going to see your horse and want to buy it. So, if they decide they want that horse, you still get him for that race and you win the prize money of that specific race, because there is still prize money for these claiming races. But at the end of it, if someone else claimed him for that claiming amount, then they get your horse. So what you want to do, you don't want to go too low because someone will claim it, but at the same time, you don't want to go too high in some of these bigger claiming races, because then you probably aren't going to win any of the prize pool that is there. So really interesting thing. So we ended up, like I said, before they ever purchased the horse, we got involved into the contract and the agreements and everything. And then there was a race at, I think it's called Saratoga Park. But basically, we were looking at two different horses, and we ended up going with this one, Assembly Point, who was the first race. That was essentially the gift that my parents gave me, was a percentage of Assembly Point. And it's been such a cool adventure. We then moved, they moved, I should say, because truthfully, I don't have a whole lot of say in what's going on. I'm sure I could put in input, but because I know so little, I kind of keep out of it. But basically, they moved him to Maryland, which was really cool because my parents were there. So they've actually been able to go down to the racetrack and see the horse. We're very much in touch with the trainers and all that. We get constant feedback every day, how they did while they were warming up and practicing, what's going on. And what's cool and a little different about Assembly Point, the first horse I got, is when we got him there, he actually had some health problems, which was a little concerning at first, just for someone who knew nothing about horse racing. We finally got this horse. I'm super stoked, and then these things start coming out. Hey, we got to do this, this, and this to get him back up to where he needs to be. But anyway, so the past couple months I've been getting him back up to this point, and then this past weekend, just to add on to such a hectic Sunday, which I'm excited to get into later on. But he finally raced his first race as I've been an owner. And it was a really fun race. I actually watched it on Discord with some friends of mine. I pulled up the live stream and everything, and he led a majority of the race. He ended up finishing in fourth, but it was a great time. I think his prize money was like 2,000, so nothing will really trickle back to me there. But it was a lot of fun, and it was really cool. But earlier in the week, I was talking to my father. We go back and forth about this all the time. I'll call him probably every couple days, if not every day, to talk about the updates that we get from the trainers and everything. And we had the cool thing about this Little Blue Bird Stables is they have more than just one horse. It's not like we went in with their only horse. They do this with a lot of horses. Not too many, but probably I think they have 8, 9, 10, something around that number. And so we got this note or this email that was talking about a horse that raced at Churchill Downs near me, that they were looking to go into and claim as someone they actually had in the past, and they raced him in a claiming race, and someone else took him, so then they lost him. But he's an older horse. And they kind of just said, hey, we're looking to get this horse back. And we ended up getting a part of that as well. So I just got this past weekend, we just set up we are now partial owners of a second racehorse. His name is Pinson. And he's an 8-year-old, so he's getting near the end of his career. but he's a really successful racehorse. We were looking the other day, me and my father, and I believe his career winnings is like 500 grand, which is pretty crazy to think about. So we're excited to see what he can do. You know, it's kind of last minute. We just jumped into it, but the whole scene of racehorsing is fun. At least of what I've seen so far. So we figure we might as well dive in. It's been going great. You know, the fun thing too is, you know, I had my first race last weekend. And then on Monday, that was on Sunday. On Monday, we got an email and they said he looks so good. We're thinking about putting him back in a race this Sunday. So I might be able to see a race for my first horse assembly point online again. And then, like I said, we got involved with Pinson, the older horse who's racing here at Churchill Downs. So I'll be able to go see that in person. You know, go get to see him walk the paddock and race and all that fun stuff. So it's been a really cool adventure. It's something I would encourage people to get into. You know, I never knew how quickly I'd get into horse racing as fast as I had. But it also makes me wonder, you know, it wasn't really something I ever thought I would get into. I didn't pay much attention to it. But that is, you know, that was just because in Maryland, I never saw a lot of it. But in West Virginia, I was curious, Wesley, you know, was horse racing ever a big thing? I mean, clearly it sounds like dog racing had its areas. Was horse racing a thing too in West Virginia?
Yeah, there was not any horse racing in West Virginia that at least I knew of or was
Is it
involved
even
with.
legal, to be honest?
Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I have to do a little digging there. Just don't. I never really heard a whole lot about it other than say like the Kentucky Derby,
Hmm.
every year. But that was about it. I mean, I don't know. I'm googling it right now to
Yeah,
see
there definitely
if it's
are.
legal. Okay, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But
We
it's probably
Charlestown, you know,
okay.
racing slots. You know.
Yep. So there is some horse racing, but it's not something big. I don't think it has as much of a historical significance as kind of where you're at now and really
Oh,
what got you
absolutely.
into it. But what I thought was crazy is there is some things I kind of want to unpack out of
Yeah. Oh,
everything you
yeah.
just said there.
Give me one sec too. I know I just went on a rant, so I do
Yep.
apologize. There's just so much there. It's a really fun thing for me to kind of share with people. So I do apologize for that rant, or that rant, but I'd love to get into it. Yeah, for sure. What you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that just is crazy to me is this whole concept of claiming races.
Yep.
Okay, so you're telling me that someone can come in at the beginning of the race and put down a certain amount of money to claim a horse. So if they go on to win, are
Yeah,
can
yeah,
they
yeah.
just
No, no.
buy them automatically, or
So
is there like
yeah,
what's going on there?
kind of touch base with there, and once again, this is my understanding of it, right? So
Yep.
I've been involved in this for a little, barely over 3 months. So I'm certainly no expert, but from what I've picked up and what I've kind of, I think I learned, right, is the way a claiming race works is so if you have a horse, right, and you say, you know, there's a 15,000, we'll go back to this example, a $15,000 claiming race, right? The prize money for that race, I don't know. I don't even know this, but let's say is 15,000, right? So you want to race them because you want to get that chunk of the 15,000 prize money for the race, right? But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, they have these claiming prices set in place so people don't, you know, go down to low divisions. And basically the way it works is you put your horse in a $15,000 claiming race, right?
Yep.
Before the race even starts, anybody has the opportunity to buy your horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you go into a claiming race that's, you know, $15,000 and someone knows your horse, you know, say they've seen him race before, they kept track of his races, they see a good projection out of him, something like that, and they think that's worth 15,000 because you put him in the race, they are able to buy it. Now, the way that works is they don't just give the money over and they get the horse and then it's their horse for the race. The original owner still gets the outcome of the race,
Okay.
right? So you have a horse and you take him to this $15,000 claiming race. Someone else says, "Hey, that horse is worth 15,000. I won him," and they buy it. You still get to finish that race. So then you take your horse, you race him. Say he wins first place, and you win. You know, like I said, $10,000. You know, that's still your money. But then once the day's over, you have to hand that horse over for the 15,000 that
Wow.
was purchased. And so it makes it interesting because, with our horse, we wouldn't want to go, let's say, to a $10,000 claiming race, or maybe we would. I'm not even sure what we're racing him in. That's how little I know. But if we, say we think his worth is 15,000, right? We don't want to take him to a $10,000 claiming race, even if that prize money is 10,000.
Hmm.
If it means that someone says, "Hey, that horse is way out of his league here. I'm going to claim him for so cheap." Whereas maybe
Yeah.
that horse really should be racing in 15, $20,000 claiming races.
Yeah.
But in those races, there's always going to be that horse that's a little better. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
those are the horses that get claimed. If that
Yep.
makes more sense. I don't know if I
No,
cleared
that makes sense. I understand it a little bit better now, and it kind of loops back around. The businessman in me, I guess, is kind of enjoying this and liking this concept. So essentially, what it does is it keeps you from getting in races that are too easy. Essentially, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yep,
because you're
exactly.
saying my horse is more than that, but at the same time, like it could potentially pay to put him in races that maybe are more you think are more challenging, but if someone sees potential and they're willing to give you, I don't know, 15K over what you paid for this horse, you probably just want to offload them. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like that
Right.
probably makes sense.
Right, for sure, and I think, that's, the end game. I think the last race you wanna have with your horse is when you're moving up in these races, right? You're going to higher claiming races. You're starting to be successful at them. Once you get to a point where you say, "I think he's gonna win this race, and I'm happy with someone purchasing him at this price," you race him, and then hopefully he wins because then you get the prize money, and then he's sold, so you get the money for selling the horse.
Yeah.
So,
That makes a
yeah,
whole lot more sense to me now. I
yeah,
was a
and
little
uh,
confused on that.
a great example of this is that my second horse that I'm now a partial owner in, Pinson. So the stables actually had Pinson, and what's really cool about getting him back is he's going to be working with the same trainer, a trainer who raced 60 plus races with him. So it's cool to have someone familiar. But anyways, they had Pinson, and they raced him in a race where someone else saw the value of Pinson. They saw how much money he had won or how successful he'd been in races, and they bought him from a claiming race. We raced him. I don't know what he placed in that race, but we got whatever prize money was allotted towards Pinson, or I say we, but Little Bluebird's stables. Um, but then they the Pinson got claimed, so the horse went away, and then so we no longer owned him. And then we went to another claiming race, and there we saw Pinson again. He was racing, and they said, we're going to go after this horse again. We liked having him. He's a successful horse. Let's see what we can do with him in his last year or so of racing. And so they went out and they saw him in a claiming race, and they bought him right back. And so now I can say we, because I'm now a part of it, have Pinson, and we're going to see how he does going forward. But yeah, it's a
Cool.
crazy world. It's a crazy racing. Horse racing is something else.
Yeah. So I guess another question I have though is so say your horse goes out and he wins first. How does money come back to you? And if so, kind of what does that process look like?
Okay, so I don't want to get into the numbers of everything necessarily, but the other thing that plays a part in kind of having a horse and being a part of this is, horses aren't cheap to maintain, so to
Hmm.
speak, right? You have your stable fees, just where he sleeps at night and what he gets fed and stuff like that. You have a trainer who works with him daily, things of that nature. So if one of my horses wins a race, the first thing, so you have your allotted amount of the prize money, right? So we run a race, we get X amount of dollars.
Hmm.
A percentage of that, I don't know what it is. It's probably like a third, so something around there, goes to like the jockey and things of that nature, right? So it covers that, and then we're left with, let's say, two thirds. Basically, I don't know what the next. Let's say a third of that then would go into the cost of living for the horse, outside of the racing, so his stable fee, stuff like that. And then the money that's left up gets split depending on, the size of your partnership or percentage of what you own in that specific racehorse. So
Okay.
it does come back, and going back to kind of end goal, I think the end goal is you have a horse, he goes out, he gets his race, he wins a race, and then he gets claimed. So, you know, collectively the group of owners gets, the money for winning the race, and then they get the claiming money, and then you can kind of disperse that because there's no more stable fees at the end of that. There's no, it's just as far as giving money back out.
Yep.
Right. So, it can. I think it's going to be very exciting, and like I said, that's end goal. So who knows? And my other thought is that I if I continue to enjoy this as much as I have, when that last day comes or that last race does come, or say one day we put him in a race and he just get claimed, because that's a realistic thing that can happen. We just race him in a race. Maybe we don't think it's too low or something like that, but people really like what they see and they claim him, and
Yeah.
we just lose him that race. If money does come back out, I'm very tempted, and I'm sure I will. It will just go right back in, on to
Yeah.
the next.
Yeah.
I'm waiting to see one of these fuckers race in the Derby. I'll tell you, it will never happen, but I'm waiting for it.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm super intrigued by this. I really am. I just think it's a cool concept. It's cool to, if nothing else, you have partial ownership of a racehorse, and there's not too many people I know, probably no one else I know, that can say that. So whether any money comes back or not, it seems like a cool concept. I think it's awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, sometime off the podcast, and who knows, maybe we'll follow it up on the podcast. I'll throw some numbers at you. Maybe we'll get you involved here, Wesley. I'll tell you
What
what, I do have the in.
I'm ready to always talk business, so
I
just let
love
me
it.
know, Jack.
I love
One
it.
thing I want to jump into now is kind of shift gears a little bit here, but not really at the same time. So we talked about your racehorse here. Um, cool conversation. I definitely want to continue this maybe offline and we'll bring it back on. But one thing I brought to you after the first time you told me about this racehorse you owned, instantly something stood out to me that I saw on Reddit at one point. It's kind of combining racehorses with NFTs. All right. And it's this
Okay.
game called Zed Run. And I know I've talked to you a lot about this
Mhm.
up to this point. And it's super interesting because it takes a lot of the stuff that you're talking about horse racing, combines it with NFTs. So in the digital world, like the metaverse. Um, and basically, essentially, the rundown of what goes on here is you can purchase a horse in the form of an NFT. Okay.
Mhm.
So just like you went out and purchase partial ownership of your real racehorse, and
Right.
you can actually enter it in digital races to actually earn prize money. So you go and you pay an entry fee, and you can win prize money. But each horse is different in terms of um, like different features, colors associated with it, different genetics, so certain bloodlines of all these horses and where they come down. How close is it to the most purebred genetic of what's called a Z1 racehorse? So, and it continues every time you breed them, you essentially add the two horses together. But what's really cool is it's got like breeding mechanics built in to where you can get a male horse, a female horse, breed them, and it's crazy. People are starting stables out of this. People are starting actual businesses breeding these racehorses. And I just thought this was the coolest idea I've seen in a while. It kind of combines my interest in NFTs and then also your interest in racehorses, which is starting to bleed over into me. I brought this up to you, and just overall, what do you think, man? You think it's a pretty cool idea?
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, you brought it to me a couple weeks ago. I honestly, I think it was right after talking about my horse. And I was extremely interested in it. The one thing I'll say as far as NFTs go, is I'm not well versed in it. Right. I don't know. It's something new, and I'm excited to get into that. I think here in a minute, but as a whole, it was a new concept, let's say, for me. So when you showed it to me, I definitely had my doubts at first, and then we really looked into it, and we spent some time looking at some stuff together. And then here the past couple weeks, I've looked into it a little more, and it's shaping up to be pretty damn cool. And what's neat about it is there's a lot that goes into it. So the initial reaction for me about Zed Run was that it was going to be very, I I guess simple would be the word for it, right? Like you go out, you purchase this NFT horse. There's no other horse that's like it. That's the what NFTs are, right? So you get this very specific horse, and depending on his features, this is how he runs. But I thought it was going to be very random. You just kind of put him in races and hope that he won, which honestly boils down. That is what horse racing is at the end of the day. But I thought it was going to be a lot of random stuff. But going in and looking at it, you have these different classes of horse, these different genetics. You put these two horses together, they make a great, I don't know, long distance runner, things of that nature. And it's really cool to see that breakdown and how it's not so much necessarily, and you very much could, and it's something I would be very willing to do, just go and buy a horse and just put him in these races. But if you'd like, you can really invest some money and some time to kind of build a stable, almost like it's just real life. And, you breed these horses, and after, time goes on, you get, these horses after that, and you can sell them or you can race ones that you think are going to be successful, things of that nature. It's a really cool concept as a full. And it's neat to me because, like I said, the concept of NFTs, right, are fairly new to me. I don't think we should get into it today, but like, the cryptocurrencies, all that, I feel like I'm a part of, definitely. I have a good understanding of it, and all that. And honestly, I'd love to hear your opinions of cryptos, one of these podcasts. But as far as NFT goes, that's in my mind, that's the next step of crypto, essentially. And like I said, I want to get into this because I want you to correct me if I'm being completely, dumb. But basically, it's a new concept for me. To see it in the perspective of this, Zed run, it is a really cool thing to see. And looking at it, I'm excited to get a part of it. And I'm excited. I don't know if you're 100% for it or what, but I'd love to get a hold of a horse. See how it goes. Like I said, it's may not necessarily be the most profitable way looking at how Zed Run works, but I think it could be fun and it could lead into something bigger.
Dude, so I'm 100% down. To be honest with you, so I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this through, and kind of what Jack alluded to is there's a lot of strategy and kind of I guess planning and how you could go about purchasing a horse through Zed Run. And to be honest with you, I want to jump into this, and I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole. We'll probably buy a horse that is not anything special, but I'm interested in doing it. So, Jack, what do you say we buy a bouncing back horse this week?
Yeah, you got me on the mic, put me in the hot seat. I'm all for it. I'd
All
love to
right.
do it.
Let's do it. Let's lock it in. Let's step into this world. I mean, we talked about Jack's horse racing experience. I think this would be cool to kind of do something we keep the audience posted on. And again, don't expect much. I mean, some of these courses are going for thousands and thousands of dollars. We're not looking to spend that. We're looking to spend a few $100 just to dip our feet in. But you never know. I mean, maybe it's something that picks up and becomes more mainstream. I do encourage everyone to go check this out. It seems like an interesting concept to me, and I do think NFTs are the future. But maybe it turns into something profitable, and we can spend some time maybe building it up a little bit more, maybe building a stable. But for now, I like the idea of us just buying a racehorse, keeping the fans up to date on how it's doing, maybe getting in some racing, and just see what happens.
Dude, I love it. The bouncing back stables, man. We're on to something, I can't believe if you had asked me how deep I'd be into horse racing and then how deep I'd be into NFT horse racing a year ago, I think you're nuts. But yeah, it seems pretty cool. And now that I think about it, that would be really a fun thing to kind of incorporate into the podcast as a whole. It is somewhat of an investment. I think theoretically, the intentions are to make money doing it, right? Because that is a very realistic possibility. But at the same time, we're going to go out there and have fun and be something to kind of share, you know, talking about, week by week, and, what horses we did. And it'd even be cool, if we could somehow get some sort of engagement with some of you guys listening. Like I was just thinking about it, if we did something, yeah, I don't even know what we would do, but somehow to get, people to pick something of that horse, or maybe the races he runs or something like that, maybe the distance that we're looking for. I don't know if you have anything in mind, but I think we could do some really cool things with that.
How about this? Let's just get us kind of into the game here. All right, so I'm gonna spend some time doing a little digging into what horses we should buy range wise. So
Okay.
I don't want to buy a freaking donkey out here or something like that. But I don't want to spend a ton of money either. So
Right.
we'll spend some time doing some digging, figuring out what we want to buy to get us our first horse. Maybe we'll come up with a few options and let's get in the fans' hands and let them decide what we actually purchase. How about that?
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I think that would make things, even more fun. Shake it up a bit.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So we're gonna make this happen this weekend. Stay posted on our Twitter channel because that's probably where we'll send it out. But we're gonna get some engagement here and let you guys pick the horse. And you don't know, you never know. This might turn into something fun, so and interesting. But one thing, I mean, we'll kind of go off the Zed run. There'll be a lot more to come there. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Go check them out again. Like I said, we're not endorsed by these guys at all. So it's just something that we thought was interesting. So maybe you guys will as well. Just kind of touch on your point on NFTs, and I don't want to dive too much into cryptocurrency and all that here. To be honest with you, I'm a huge fan. I'll buy crypto every week. I love this stuff. I think it is the future. But just kind of touch on NFTs for our audience that don't really know what NFTs are. So an NFT is essentially a non-fungible token. All right, so it's on the blockchain. Initially started on the Ethereum blockchain. And basically what it's doing is kind of combining two worlds of our digital assets that you guys know of: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, the stuff that you guys hear about daily, and it's kind of the next big thing. And then also the real world. So it's basically taking real world objects similar to like art, which you see a lot of. Music is an example. Video games is kind of shifting into NFTs. So that's what this Zed run is essentially. Is just a video game where you have some sort of object that has value. And then it's basically tokenizing it in a way that there can only be one of whatever you have. So it can't be duplicated. It's on the blockchain itself. So it's impossible to duplicate or replicate that. But you can have full ownership of that in forms of an NFT. So you can go through and buy an NFT on the Ethereum blockchain, which is what Zed Run is actually on. And you're the sole owner of that resource and all the features about it and that image. And it is interesting because a lot of people will say, especially when it comes to art, it's like, can't I just take a picture of it? It's a JPEG. What's so special about that? But it's more than that. And this is kind of the first step. And yes, it is a picture, but just having sole ownership of that thing, and this is going to expand. So what if that thing actually has royalties and someone's making money off of it, and you're able to really profit off that image, and it all comes back to you because you have ownership of that particular image? Or in the terms of a game, you have an NFT that maybe is an asset to a game, like a racehorse, or if you look up Axie Infinity, that's another great example of this, where you can go and you can win money. You're playing to earn money, and you own a NFT that is more valuable than all the other NFTs because of certain characteristics and how well you do in that game. So that's kind of an overview of what NFTs are. I personally am extremely bullish on them, and I hope that we can continue to talk about them through this podcast. But yeah, Jack, you got any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, NFTs are very new to me. I don't know them very well. A vast majority of the knowledge I do have come from you. The only other would be a close cousin of mine, who I'd love to get on here and talk to. He's a big fan of NFTs. But yeah, I mean, there's just a whole picture around NFTs that I always had questions about, and I'm really glad that you brought it up because you know, I very much was like the exact statement you said, where, someone said, hey, you know, why are people spending so much money on these things that you could just take a screenshot of and keep on your phone? Like the biggest one that I think I see kind of going around is on Twitter. You see a lot of these bigger names people purchasing, and I don't even know what they're called, but these pictures of kind of these cartoon characters who, are these really expensive NFTs. So they purchase them, and they are the sole ownership of that NFT. And they take in a lot of time. The reason I know about it is because they're going on to, the Twitter. I'm trying to think of the name of it. The Twitter icon. That what is it? What's the
Crypto
picture?
punks.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Yeah, those pictures that people are putting as their little Twitter picture and everything. So, I always questioned it just like you said, where, couldn't I just pull up that picture of that, Twitter picture, take a picture of it, and then I could put it as my profile picture, and I didn't have to spend 50,000 on that. So I was initially, that was my perspective. It was probably why I was never big into it. But then talking to you more and more, and probably, the biggest, not so much question, but kind of check my understanding is that, that is a very, very basic form of an NFT, and
Yeah.
that they can get extremely more complex. And a lot of times it's maybe not just a picture that you're looking at, but it's somehow involved in something you're doing, or
Yeah.
it's in itself is an activity that you're doing, something of that sort. So is that kind of lining up? Does that make sense? And like I said, I just know so very little, so I'm just trying to get a good understanding of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on, and that's what you're saying. They are so much more valuable than just a picture. So, in the terms of just this Zed Run project we were talking about earlier, a big part of this is the breeding mechanics behind it. Okay, so to be able to take two horses, breed them together, and have something else that's also of equal value. But there's a
Right.
lot more to that than just an image. Okay, so I personally love to code myself. I really enjoy it. I like to understand coding. I have for a while. I get the opportunity to do a little bit of it at work. But there's a lot of complex coding that's actually coded into the blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain itself, that goes into these NFTs that basically
Okay.
will have data behind the scenes to say, okay, if I breed these two horses, I'll have this particular outcome. Okay.
Mhm.
And that's something, and you're starting to see it with the Bored Ape Yacht project. So that's another big one that you'll see out with all these profile pictures where people are just putting them on their profiles of these monkeys, and they're really badass monkeys. I would love to own one, but they're going for millions of dollars, and I
Right.
can't make it happen. Maybe one day we'll have a DAO that we can raise that money, and we'll buy a bouncing back board ape. I'm not even going to explain to you what a DAO is now. I'll leave a little bit of a cliffhanger there. But
Okay.
anyway, what was really cool is it's not just these monkeys. You could actually take your monkey, and then you could purchase a serum. All right. And you could
Okay.
take your monkey, you could combine them and turn it into a mutated monkey. Okay.
Interesting.
So it's even more valuable at that point. It's not something. So not only do you have to own the board ape itself, you have to also own the serum and then mix them together, which is burning them both forever. And then you get this new
Wow,
thing that
really?
no one has. But yeah, and that's the opportunity you have with NFTs that are so much different. And that's why it's so much more than a picture is we're only starting to open the box of the opportunities here. Eventually, these NFTs will be in things we do daily, and to me, what I'm the most bullish about personally is gaming. Okay,
Okay.
so think about a world where these different assets that you're purchasing will allow you to have some sort of advancement in a game or some sort of
Mhm.
specialty item that no one has. So you jump in. Jack and I love to play Call of Duty. You jump into Call of Duty and say you have a gun that no one else has. And you
Mhm.
purchase that gun and your sole ownership of it in the form of an NFT, but you could take it and you can sell it to someone else if you were to want to or
Yep.
want to do that. But it's just more and more valuable because it's unique, it's only to you, and so on. And maybe there's another type of gun that 10 people have, but the one
Right.
you have is one. So,
I see what
um,
it's interesting that you bring it up in that format for two things. And I kind of want to wrap up this just because I know we do have a good amount of sports stuff to get into. But this is definitely something I want to dive deep into another day. But the two things are, first off, you brought up the gaming and how it's going to play a part in there. And I think that's interesting because are you familiar at all? And this was a PC game. I actually never played it. I have a friend who's a big advocate for it. But did you ever play CS:GO?
I did
Which
not, but I play a little bit of Valorant, which is somewhat similar.
so it is very similar. But yeah, so CS:GO, I had to even look it up because I didn't know it's Counter Strike
Mhm.
Global Offensive. But anyways, um, they have been they for a long time done exactly what you're explaining. And I wonder because and this is a good question for you. As far as NFTs, because they've been so popular and kind of, really gaining a following and things of that in the near future, it's become more relevant. But have NFTs been around, since the beginning of cryptocurrencies, since the beginning of Ethereum and Bitcoin?
Yes, I don't know the exact history of NFTs, but the short answer, no. So,
Okay.
um, Again, I could talk for hours on this, but Bitcoin itself, and that's the big cryptocurrency a lot of people talk about, you
Hmm.
can't code on top of Bitcoin. So
Right.
you can't make applications on top of Bitcoin or different things like that. So the whole concept of non-fungible tokens, you cannot build one on top of Bitcoin itself. So you got to think a majority of the cryptocurrencies from the point that was there's a lot more history that goes into this, but from the point before Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was not the first
Right.
cryptocurrency, just
Of
so
course.
everyone knows.
Of
But
course.
when that started to around the point of Ethereum, where you have a uh, blockchain that you can actually go and code on, NFTs did not exist. Okay. And then Ethereum came around, which was the first blockchain that you have Solidity, which is the code that Ethereum is wrote on, and then also allows people like you and I to go in and build applications. Okay.
Hmm.
And from that point, that's why you see different some of these no-name tokens, okay, that like Dogecoin and things like that are built on top of other blockchains.
Right.
It's a similar type of technology that's going on between that and then actually an NFT. Okay.
Okay. I definitely
So
see what you're saying.
yep. So till really that became a big thing and people were coding on top of these other blockchains, NFTs were not that big. So they have been around for a few years, and yes, they have recently gotten popular. But I think it's mainly just because of a lot of what we're saying is we have even started to dabble into what this might be.
Right.
Um, used to be able to buy CryptoPunks for I think it was like 90 cents or something
That's
crazy cheap like
insane.
that, and now they're worth millions of dollars. So
Right.
it takes people really understanding it and being bought in on the whole process of an NFT and understanding what it is for it to be worth something essentially.
Okay. So yeah, so going back, that makes sense, and I'm glad I cleared that up because so going back to CS:GO, right? I know that they have had this structure where there are different skins for different weapons that are differ in its rarity, right? And I know there's a whole marketplace for the skins of these weapons. Kind of exactly what you were alluding to towards COD. And so I was just curious if that is an NF if those are NFTs in themselves because the reason I know about it, and as ashamed as I am to bring this up, is there's a website. I forget what it's called. Let me look it up. I think it's called Dad Drop, something like that. But you can basically, um, you can purchase these skins and you can, gamble them and things like that. So they do hold, actual monetary value. And so, I'd be interested some other time to look into this with you because I feel like this is the direction that you're going in.
Yeah.
Now,
Real quick, and
yep.
I won't spend a whole lot of time on, but I do want to point out the difference between that and
Okay.
then NFTs.
Oh, I'd love
And
to
and
hear
I
it.
and I can keep it pretty simple. The fact
Okay.
that you can duplicate that and basically hack the system to have whatever you say is one on one. You essentially do not have a whole lot of proof that's one on one. Where in
Okay,
it,
now okay, let me defend it here though.
yep,
So I see what you're saying in the context of being in the game, right? So if you're in the game, you could just hack it to make it look like you have it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying even a step further to think that it's easier to duplicate a real version of that skin or whatever it is
Right.
and it being within that game than it's going to be to say I have a code written in the Ethereum blockchain that will basically prove to anyone in this world that can quickly get on the blockchain and look up my address to say, okay, this has been transacted from person A, person B to person C, which who I am, and that's the whole path of this. You can't get that within CS:GO. CS:GO systems could potentially be hacked, and there's nothing that will actually link that to person A to person B to person C.
Okay. I'd be interested. Have you looked into that before? Like before I just brought that up. Have you heard of that? Have you seen that?
I have not, so I'm definitely speaking out of my ass a little bit
No,
here.
no, I'm not even saying that. I'm not trying to point. I'd be curious to look at it though, just because, like I said, how you kind of brought it up with COD, and I understand clearly there may be some differences, but it seems similar. So I'd love to take a look at you, but I just want to end this conversation bringing up the whole game thing, and I don't want to get into this whatsoever. I just have to say it, okay? If you're not still invested in GME, you're making a mistake. Okay. There's a couple reasons why, and I don't want to get into it. I'd love to have the whole talk about it later. But I think as far as NFTs involved in GameStop, I think it could make things very interesting for the complexion of what GameStop is and how successful they could be. But well, like I said, we'll get that into later. I just wanted to let you know, before it's too late. It wouldn't hurt to dabble in one or two GME stocks, maybe even some more. But
It would not. Well, let's go ahead and shift gears to sports, man. We had a lot of great discussion, but we are already an hour in. So let's do some
oh
quick
Lord,
fire through some of these sports
yep,
topics. Because I do want to spend some time talking to F1 and then our
yeah.
locks of the week. So let's go ahead and kick things off with the segment of what the hell are the coaches doing this week? And we're going to talk about the University of Washington's head coach being suspended for him supposedly hitting and shoving a player. Now, I don't think this is crazy as a lot of the stuff we've been covering here this weekend. And I can kind of go into that a little bit more why I believe so. But essentially, what happened is Jim Lakes is the coach of the University of Washington football team. And it looks like there's a little bit of a conflict on the field after a play. One of his players is coming towards the other player where he then steps in the middle, shoves him away, and kind of slaps him on the head. All right. So this led to Jim Lakes having a 1 week suspension without pay from their game coming up. And I just wanted to hear your opinion, Jack. What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, we got to kick off sports with the classic coach talk, right? It's unfortunate that this was picked up on TV, and I think there are people that are going to think really different of me when it comes to this. But dude, these sports are passionate, right? These guys are going out there and they're putting everything they have on the line. That goes for coaches. That goes for players. There's a lot of emotion that goes into this game, and sometimes you have your arguments, you have your disagreements, and a lot of times, who knows? I'm not saying that those should get physical by any means, but a shove. I mean, it's the reason I think this is so bizarre is that he gets suspended for it. And it's not
100%.
even like, it'd be one thing if that guy went up and grabbed him with two hands and rocked him back and threw him into the ground, right? The guy just, leaped over. He's trying to show his emotions, his frustrations. The biggest thing that comes to mind is with the Michigan State head coach. What is it, Tom Rizzo? What is it?
Rizzo.
Rizzo. I'm trying to think what his first name
Dude.
is. Is it? Yeah. But anyways,
I'll tell you here in a second.
yeah. But anyways, so head coach of Michigan State, and he is a
Tom
very
Tom
it is
Izzo.
Tom Izzo. There it is. I love it. But anyways, a very emotional coach, and I remember just a couple years back, there was just a lot of speculation because in the NCAA tournament when they lost, you could see him screaming at the players. I mean, he was so upset, he was screaming at them. I remember afterwards, there was a lot of things in the press that said, "Hey, he's screaming at these guys, he's violating them, like it's this and that." And the thing is, it's an emotional, and it's funny because they went on to talk to those players that were getting screamed at. Those guys were like, "We love him." Like that, we look at this guy like he is a father figure. Like, he's screaming at me because I didn't do something right. Like, I'm glad he's that passionate. I'm glad he cares about the sport and he cares about how well we're doing. Stuff like that. So, I think it's the same situation. You have his coach that's very upset. And he's out there and he's displaying his emotions. He's showing how frustrated in. And I do want to be very clear because, I forget the basketball coach, but there was one basketball coach who was like throwing balls at players and stuff, throwing chairs at players, stuff like that's not okay. All right. When it gets too physical, but a shove like this, I mean, you can go on and you can look at the video. It doesn't I didn't think he was looking to harm him. It didn't look like he was trying to be violent. Like I say, he's just showing his emotions. And it came out a little too aggressive. I understand that, but I don't think it was by any means a reason for a 1 game suspension. It just seems a little nuts. But yeah, that's my take. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I completely agree. I mean, it's crazy to me, and to be honest with you, I think people are just too soft nowadays, and it sucks the fact that the University of Washington probably felt that they had to make this response because If not, you'd have a bunch of people kind of getting on to
Right.
him about it. And to me,
Absolutely.
that's just crap. I mean, I played high school football. I played sports. I had coaches come to me and maybe not do the exact same reaction, but something just as physical to me in the past in high school sports. You can tell one, the player is making a mistake by his interaction with the other team, and all the coach is doing is coming in and breaking it up. And to me, it looks like he kind of shoves him back, gives him a tap on the helmet, and you could tell he's saying something to him. So it'd be
Right.
different if he went up and just punched this guy in the
Right.
face out of like an argument that they're arguing. No, he's going up. He's telling them. He's probably saying like, you know better. You know better. You can't do this. I
Right.
think there might be. I don't know the whole context of what's going on here, but I assume there potentially might be a flag called or just something he doesn't think is appropriate. To
I
me, it
think
doesn't
what was
make any
happening,
sense.
I think he was jawing with a player on the other teams. I might
Yep.
be wrong about that, but I think that's what happened. And maybe that led to a flag. I don't know if it did, but basically he went to kind of intervene that situation, and that's what kind of led this to happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's emotion. It's a game of sports. The thing is, these guys. I mean, people don't realize how much time goes into playing these sports. You know, it's an all day affair. You know, you don't get many days off. You know what I'm saying? So and there's going to be a lot of emotion anytime these guys are on the field. And I think you're spot on. You know, the only reason they did this is because they felt like, too many people would be like, oh my God, he's, violently harassing his players, which
Yep.
is just, it's crazy. And you're right. It's pretty soft. But all right, let's speed run through some of this last stuff. Starting with, you had sent me a Twitter picture earlier in the week. I loved it. We're going to have to find, I don't know if you already did, but we'll have to go on our bouncy back Twitter, make sure we retweet it or repost it, whatever we're able to do. But tell them what we're looking at.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and get this reposted to the fans, so everyone can check it out. I'll retweet it on the Bouncing Back podcast Twitter, and then also share it in the show notes. But essentially, we have a picture. We talked last week about the Texas University's assistant coach, his girlfriend or wife. I think it's his wife. Essentially having a monkey that attacked a kid during a Halloween party. So,
Right.
basically, this fan from Iowa State had a picture of the Longhorn upside down. So Texas's mascot. On one side is a stripper holding on to the actual horn itself, dangling off, and the other side is a monkey during their game this week. So I just not too much to talk about here, but I just thought this was hilarious. Jack and I were on Discord the other day, and I shared this with him. We got a good laugh out of it, so I'll show it to all of you guys. That way you could check it out. But
Yeah.
I do
No, we'll
I
definitely have to do that. I just want to point out one thing. The reason you guys got to see this, the funny part about this, it's all funny, but the monkey is literally bigger than the stripper. Like
yeah.
to think that that was the monkey that was in the cage that bit that little trick or treater. Once again, it's not funny, but it's funny. It's a funny little display by Iowa State. Well done.
Yep, it was awesome. Good stuff. Real quick, we got a couple NFL players we want to talk about. We'll touch on. Really, just want to get your opinion. Maybe I can put a little bit in there, but OBJ. Starting with OBJ, we talked about him last week. Being a Browns fan, he was actually waived by the Browns.
Hmm.
Overall, I think it's a good move. Right decision for the Browns. Right decision for him. I kind of touched on that last week. Right now, it's not super clear on where he goes, but what do you think, Jack? Where do you think he's going to end up?
Yeah, so right now, it's boiling down. It looks like, because he is now a free agent, right? So we're not talking about where he can be traded to. It's where he wants to go. And it looks like it's boiled down to three different choices. It's either going to be the Chiefs, the Packers, and the Saints. I think they're all interesting. I think longevity wise, it's kind of tough looking at. I think the smartest play would to be go with the Chiefs. You have Patrick Mahomes around for a while, stuff like that. But it could be. I mean, these are three teams that no matter who gets him, I think is really going to be exciting. I would say if I had to choose, I'd like to see him go to the Packers. Reason being, one out of those three teams, the Packers is the only team that will play the Browns in the rest of the season. So I really would like to see OBJ put up monster number against the Browns. I hate to say that to you, but I think that would be a huge FU to the Browns. And based on how that situation kind of ended and how it all went, I think that would be a really fun thing to see. Like I said, I'm sorry to say that to you as a Browns fan. But it should be really interesting, And the thing about OBJ, touched on this a lot before, so I won't go into it too much, but there are a lot of people out there, it sounds like including yourself, who maybe are doubting that OBJ is even a top receiver. Now, I think he is. I think he was in a system that didn't fit for him. And that's just how kind of things went. So I'm psyched to see him get to a new team. I'm psyched to see how he does, not only the rest of the season, but moving forward in his career. Because I'd love to see him be just get back to being a breakout receiver who just makes these incredible plays.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of touch on that real quick. I do think he is a talented receiver just from seeing him play. He truly just didn't fit our offense. Um, I think he'll go on. He'll have a solid rest of his career. I actually like the Chiefs. I think that might be a good match for him. Pair him up with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey. I think he'll fit in nice. Just not our style of offense. I'm kind of glad we moved on to him, and I hope the best for him as future career. So we'll go ahead and jump down to the next topic though before we move on to kind of last week's NFL results, and that's just touching on Dalvin Cook. So some news broke today around some potential assault charges with his ex girlfriend, I believe. And we don't have a whole lot here, but supposedly there were some stories that came out a year or so back, a couple years back, where
I
he
think
kind of
something like that.
yeah
Yeah.
he beat up an ex girlfriend of his. Essentially, nothing really happened then, but now there's some stuff kind of coming out where I guess she's posted some Instagram text between the two, and it's looking pretty rough to be honest with you. I mean, it's something I personally don't take lightly. In this situation, to me, does not look like he did the right thing, and this looks extremely inappropriate. I think there's probably likely a lot more to come out of here, but just quickly, any initial thoughts around the situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's funny because when I first, it's not funny, sorry, but it's interesting because when I first saw it, I really thought it it was Dalvin Cook's whatever girlfriend, whomever was having the charges against her, right? Like that's how it started. And then, I started reading more about it and it flips back. And so I'm still a little unclear on the situation to be 100% honest, but it looks like, both Dalvin Cook and the girlfriend are looking at potential charges, right? And so, that could be really interesting. You look at a guy like Dalvin Cook and he's already, you know, I don't want to say injury prone, but there he's missed games, every season. And you throw in something like this, it definitely makes it interesting for Dalvin. And pretty crazy story too. I'd like to come back to this later on as we kind of find out more about it. But just with him, it looked like he might have kind of beat the shit out of his girl, and then his girl kind of came back and did the same to him, and then was trying to extort him, stuff like that. So definitely an interesting thing. I'm not excited, but I'm interested to see how that plays out, kind of moving forward here.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll follow up on the story and kind of keep everyone updated on what's going on. But let's go ahead and jump into the NFL last week. So we got a couple points here we want to touch on. Let's start with, to me, one of the biggest surprises of the week, and that's the Bills losing to the Jags. We've been very critical of Urban Meyer here and kind of the team um, dynamic at Jacksonville. Do you think there's anything to this, or do you think really it's just a low scoring game and not really, of course, not the best game for the Jags? Probably the worst game I've seen them play, probably here in the last few years. It's just like,
Oh,
what's
for the
going on
Bills,
here, man?
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah.
the
I don't.
Bills. Sorry.
It's kind of bizarre. I know some people who were very upset by this game. I think going into it, the Bills were like minus 800 on the money line. I mean, that's like a for sure lock. Like that upset doesn't happen. I think no one saw this game coming. I would be astonished if someone who was not a Jags fan placed a bet on the Jags winning that game. I would be even as astonished if someone put a bet on Jags to cover whatever the hell that spread was. There's no way, anyone saw this coming. I think it's nuts. I'll tell you the crazy thing about it. I think your boy Urban just saved his job for
Oh
another year,
yeah.
though.
Yep.
Like, if I think if he doesn't win that game, there's still a question if he's around at the end of the season. I think winning that game, uh, I think he secured his fate for at least one more year. What are your thoughts? Is that
100%. I don't think anything else matters the rest of the season at this point. They
right?
beat the Bills. Like, this team's still likely to go on to make a playoff run.
Oh,
Um,
whoa.
the
Oh, the
Bills, the
Bills? Okay.
Bills, the Bills, the Bills,
I
Bills.
thought you
Yeah.
said that about the Jags. I was gonna say,
No, no, no,
listen,
no.
man.
The
Are
Bills are
you
still
okay over there? How
the
many
Bills are
how many
still likely
whiskeys?
to go on to make a playoff run. So in the terms of Urban, nothing else matters at this point. They beat the Bills. Like they'll go on. Maybe they might pick up one more game against the Texans or potentially even the Jets because they really suck. But other
Wait,
than
was this
that,
game in London? No, I'm just playing. I'm just
no.
playing. That's what Herbert should do. He should just take vacation the rest of the year. He won his game. All right,
Hey,
he beat the Bills.
London wants a team over there. They might as well just ship Urban over to coach it.
Right, just send him
He doesn't have to worry about his wife, so he can just go on and he might be successful.
I think it's
Um,
that.
but yeah, you're right. Urban saves his fate at least for another year. We'll see what happens after that. I still think he'll struggle to be an NFL coach, but you never really know.
Hmm.
Next thing I want to touch on here is just Chiefs take the Packers with Packers backup quarterback. Um, any thoughts around this game, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, even with the backup quarterback, you had Aaron Jones out there, you had Devontae Adams, and you still had the Chiefs. So I'm surprised this was so low scoring. What was it, like 14-7? I think it was. Let me look
Trying to
back at that real
backtrack.
quick. 13-7. So if you would have told me, I'm assuming that's 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals total. I don't know if there was an extra point miss or something like that, but if you would have told me that only 2 touchdowns was scored, even with Aaron Rodgers out, I think that surprises me. That gives me a bit of a shock. So pretty nuts to think about. I'm interested. I'm still psyched to see how the Packers play the rest of the season. And man, it'd be nuts if they brought in OBJ.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. And like kind of my take on this game, and I might get a little borderline political here, so hold with me.
Oh Lord.
But Jordan Love is not the future. And the media tried to make him out to be the future the whole week because they were so dead set on Aaron Rodgers getting canceled over this COVID issue. Every newscast I turned on was around how Jordan Love is in the same situation as Aaron Rodgers back whenever he took it over from Brett Favre. I think we can all agree after this that Jordan Love is not Aaron Rodgers, will never be Aaron Rodgers. So just because people are upset about a vaccination, and I'm very pro COVID vaccine, I have it myself, so I just want to throw that out there. But just because you're trying to cancel Aaron Rodgers, don't go around comparing Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers. He will never be that. He will never be successful in Green Bay. They will replace him by the time Aaron Rodgers is done, is at least my opinion.
Yeah, I'll tell you what
Um,
it is. No, I'll tell you what it is because it's Green Bay trying to save Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, right?
yep.
Because what's happening is you had this whole offseason thing happen with Aaron Rodgers, right? And so during that time, you had very similar talks about Jordan Love as you did um, Aaron Rodgers, right?
Mhm.
And, a lot of people from Green Bay said, "Hey, this is the next guy. I mean, he's going to be it." And it's been funny to see, how he came out. This was his big opportunity. He got some reps week one, actually,
Yep.
but I don't think anybody could take that seriously. So this was his first chance to come out, and man, did he look like he had no idea what he was doing.
Yeah. It
Um,
just killed me the whole week going to this game. That's all I heard on every single station on the TV was around how this is very similar to Aaron Rodgers and he took over from Brett Favre after an injury. But it really wasn't. It just was people trying to justify some sort of agenda that did not make
right.
any sense. Like the guy made his decision. Jordan Love will not be Aaron Rodgers. Aaron
No,
Rodgers is too talented. And that just fired me up, man. And like I said, I had the vaccine myself. I'm very open with that. I think people should go and get the vaccine. I think that's what you should do. But don't be trying to push a certain political view just
right.
because and try to put that into saying, okay, yeah, Jordan Love's going to take over and this is his chance. We all knew that wasn't going to happen,
Yeah,
but
no,
everyone's trying to save face on it, man.
absolutely.
Well,
And then yeah, to wrap up the NFL though, we have the Titans beating the Rams, which big surprise. I mean, I think we even talked about it last week. We thought the Titans were going to need a week or two to figure out how to run their offense without Derrick Henry, and they came into this game against arguably one of the best defenses in the league, and they were just fine. They didn't really seem to have any problems, and I think it's exciting to see how they keep going. They signed AP too, so that's always going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, man, this is crazy. I think Titans has been consistently since we started this podcast the one team that you and I have just been up and down on every single week, man.
Yeah.
And it's funny because our opinions switch constantly. I
Mhm.
mean, last week you were trying to tell me that this team wasn't going to make the playoffs,
I
and
know.
there's
But
no
dude,
way
they
you
come
can
out and
sit
they
here and tell me they're
right,
not
they
going to
come
make
out
the
and beat the
playoffs.
Rams. I mean, I don't know, man. I can't read the Titans for shit. And maybe that says a lot more than what I'm saying, but they've shocked me, and to think that, it actually sounds like from what I've seen, it's actually less likely that they'll get Derrick Henry back sooner,
Yep.
right? Um, and that just may it'd be what if the Titans make the playoffs and Derrick Henry's back for the playoffs? It'd be nuts to think about.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, from what I'm seeing, there is a chance he does make the playoffs. So I think that'd be cool to see. I do think it's a good team. I don't know what to think about the Rams. That's another
Yep.
team I've kind of been back and forth on. I mean, at times, and maybe it's just a weird year. It's funny. I can't. We should do a halfway through the season show to kind of just give thoughts. But the Rams are one of those teams I thought might go on to win the Super Bowl this year. But I
Okay.
can't say that, man, anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was the beginning of the season thought. I thought for sure that Matthew Stafford would come in and be a great thing for this organization. But they're again similar to the Titans. They just seem to be so up and down. I truly can't point at a single team that's going to go on to win a Super Bowl right now. I mean, my
Right.
best pick might honestly be the Packers with Aaron Rodgers back on the roster.
Yeah. I would think you're right. I think it has to be either and it's funny to say this, but the Packers with Aaron Rodgers back or the Cardinals with Kyler Murray back.
Yep,
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Those are probably my two front runners at this moment.
Mm,
Anything this week that's kind of sticking out to you? We got a Thursday night game that is not near as great as last week.
right.
I will say that. But we have one team that's solid. That's with the Ravens, and they're playing the Dolphins, and that's at Miami for Thursday night football. I do want to touch on that game, of course, because it is Thursday night. Any thoughts here about this game?
Yeah, mostly I Ravens I think take this pretty easily. The Dolphins have kind of gotten worse every week, which is funny because they've only won one game. So I mean, I don't know how much worse they can get. But I'll tell you what this is. This is an opportunity for Lamar to show the world why he's going to be MVP at the end of the year. I think that's what you're going to get out of this. I saw the statistic last week. It was sent to me and it was on ESPN, but it said Lamar Jackson will outthrow your quarterback and then outrun your top running back.
Yep.
And it showed his stats and just showed that he had more passing yards, more passing touchdowns than the other team's quarterback, and then more rushing yards and rushing touchdowns than the other team's running back. So I'm still sold on Lamar. I think he's MVP, and I think this opportunity Thursday night going to have a lot of eyes on him against a not so good team. I think he's going to run it up.
Yep. I completely agree. I'm thinking the same lines. The other game that really kind of sticks out to me, just running down through this list, my Brownies play New England this week.
Yep.
Browns looked good last week, man. I mean, I know OBJ was gone. I've been saying that for a while. I think our offense clicks a little bit better without him, and nothing against him at all. We're just not a deep ball team. Doesn't fit our offense. But they looked really good against Cincinnati, which last week I would have told you, even after their tough loss a couple weeks ago, I still thought Cincinnati was one of the better teams in the NFL. Now I don't think so as much. But they go into New England, so to play the Patriots. I'm intrigued by this game. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I do think personally, and this is I wouldn't bet on it because we talked a little bit before the show. Um, I think the Browns come in here and they do win in a close game.
Yeah. To be 100% honest, I definitely agree. I don't like the Patriots. I don't see the truth. I think the only thing holding them together is Bill Belichick, and you know, how much is he going to be able to do continuing through the season? I don't think the Patriots are that good of a team. And at the end of the day, I think the Browns are a lot better. Now, it is interesting because they do have the same record. So, maybe I shouldn't be shitting on the Patriots. Maybe they're just fine. But I'm definitely not a fan. And maybe that's just because they've been so dominant the past, 2 decades that I don't want to see them or believe that they'll be good anymore. But I don't see it in the Patriots. I agree with you. I think Browns take it.
Yep. What about the Washington football team this week? Anything sticks out to you? Playing the
Yeah,
Buccaneers?
really? You had to bring this up?
I'm
I
sorry,
thought
man.
I
I
thought we
had
said we
to.
weren't gonna bring this up.
I had
Yeah,
to.
dude, fucking Tampa Bay. I can't wait. I can't wait for Tom Brady to throw 4 touchdowns. I can't wait to see every receiving player on the Bucks to score. It's gonna be great. I'm just glad I
So,
have Mike Evans on my
and
fantasy.
lastly, one game that really sticks out to me, I do want to talk about because I think it could potentially be an upset of the week. Atlanta Falcons at Dallas playing the Cowboys. Personally, dude, I don't know what's going on with the Cowboys after last week.
Yeah.
Very, very confusing to me. And then also, if you look back the last few weeks, to me, it's not even just the Broncos game. They played, they had a close win against the Vikings and a close win against the Patriots. Is this team as good as we thought? Like,
I,
are they that good of a team? I thought another one of these teams that I thought might actually go on to make a Super Bowl run, but now I don't know, man.
no, I think you're right. I really like this team, especially at the beginning of the year. It's unfortunate to say being in the NFC East, but they're a good team. But you look at some of the games they've played. They've played a lot of close games, and then to come out and take the L that they took. And what was that? Was that Monday night? What
Sunday night.
Sunday night?
Yeah.
It's just it didn't look good. Or it's not. Yeah, sorry. It's just not. It's not going to look good. I don't have faith in the Broncos. So to think that they kind of get, I guess, blown out. I mean, 14 is a pretty decent lead. It's just not a good look for them. And I think what you're asking is exactly what all NFL fans are asking. Is that maybe this Cowboys team isn't that good? And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't that good because they're in the NFC East. I mean, the whole NFC East is it's troublesome. So uh, to think that the Falcons are getting +9 against the Cowboys is pretty absurd.
Yep. I agree. Yep. I think this could be a close one, potentially even an upset. So I'm excited to see what happens. But all right, man, I'm ready to shift gears. I want to talk about this next topic probably quite a bit today because you got me locked in, and that's into Formula One, dude. I I
Absolutely.
I can't stop following it. Mexico Grand Prix this past weekend, and all I'm gonna say, dude, is it was amazing. I didn't have a chance to jump on Discord with you because I was running late, but the race itself for the first place was not anything fun to watch.
Right.
Verstappen went on, just kind of ran away with it. But the second and third place race was crazy at times, and then
Mhm.
just the atmosphere at Mexico City just kind of continues to validate why I like this sport so much and why I'm
Mhm.
so interested in it because of what you got me into. But do you kind of just want to give the fans a little bit of rundown of the second and third place battle and what it meant to Mexico?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was a really cool race. We've talked about how close the standings are and everything. So everything meant a lot. But one of the biggest things going into the Mexican Grand Prix was that Sergio Perez, which is Red Bull's, second driver, so to speak. I don't think they like to call it that, but there's Max Verstappen, who is the best, or is at the top of the driver standings in F1. He's the other Red Bull driver, so you have Sergio Perez, and he's Mexican. So there's never been a Mexican who was able to stand on the podium at the Mexico Grand Prix or Mexican Grand Prix. So it was really exciting to see all these fans. I mean, huge crowds. And what's cool about the race at Mexico, I don't know, I'm sure you noticed this just by the design of the track, but there's these huge grandstands that the cars literally drive right through, and they were just packed all over, and all of them were cheering for Sergio Perez, and it came down to a really close battle between him and um, Hamilton because Hamilton. It was a really good race. It wasn't anything too crazy. Outside the first lap was nuts because Max Verstappen started in third and slipstreamed his way up and went in front of both Bottas and Hamilton, and he just coasted to a win after that. But like you said, Bottas ended up getting hit on the first lap and went all the way to last place, and then so you had Sergio Perez up there with running right next to Hamilton, and they kind of battled up very similar to how Max and Hamilton battled it out 2 weeks ago. At the United States Grand Prix. But so they battled it out, and basically the big thing was making sure Sergio Perez got as high as he could. And so they went at it, and Sergio Perez made one last lunge at him on the last lap of the race, but he couldn't quite close it off. But he still ended in third, and it was just an amazing atmosphere kind of watching afterwards. Just these fans going nuts. It's such a cool environment to see. It was good for him to win or get third place in that race, which is a really big deal. In some of these races, I think third, second place, stuff like that can really get underlooked. The design of F1, getting third place, you get a good amount of points. It helps out a lot. So it was a really cool environment, a really fun race to kind of watch and be a part of.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was so fun. I was watching it. What I thought was super crazy was just the fact that, as Perez was hunting down Hamilton there, those last 10 laps or so on,
Mhm.
every single time they cut through that stadium, I mean, you could just hear the roar of the
Oh,
crowd.
roars, roars! It was nuts.
Dude, it was awesome. I sent a text to Jack even though we weren't on Discord. I just couldn't imagine being there. Like, how awesome would that be? To even though I'm personally not from Mexico, obviously, but just to be in that environment and to see how exciting that would be. I mean, it's kind of cool. I mean, so the Formula One's not huge in United States, and then off-road racing is also not huge, or because of the same reason. So we have NASCAR, dirt track, different things like that. But racing like this doesn't really bring up someone to have the opportunity to potentially go to F1
Right.
really at all that I know of in recent future. Um, but just to think about what it would be like to be in Austin or be in Miami, to have
Oh,
someone from
nuts.
the U.S. actually even about to get a podium finish, how crazy that would be. Hopefully one day we'll see
Be
it, and
nuts.
I
Yeah.
want to be there. I hope one day I go to every Formula One race because
Yeah,
of
that would
how
be
cool this sport is.
it's something else.
Um, but maybe one day. So I thought it was really awesome, really cool. And what I think is neat is, I mean, this continues to increase Verstappen's lead on Lewis
Yep.
Hamilton. So right now we're at 312 points versus 293 points of Hamilton. So it's getting a farther and farther gap, and we're heading to Brazil this week, I believe,
Mhm.
which, to my understanding, is another really good Red Bull track.
Mhm.
So I don't see this. I don't see this lead getting any closer unless something crazy happens.
So yeah, definitely. Max is definitely pulling away. But I will say, as crazy as racing is, and F1, if say we go out to the Brazilian Grand Prix and Max crashes, and finishes last, or his car doesn't make it for some reason, and Lewis wins. I mean, we're right back in it, So it could go crazy. There's a lot of unpredicted stuff that can take place. The craziest thing about F1 races, so if you're not committed to sitting down and watching the first race, the one thing I'll say about F1, you definitely tune in at the end to catch some big moments, but you want to be there for the first lap. That first lap where everybody's so close together, it just, people collide, people bump tires, people run off the track. It's always nuts. And we've seen that kind of off the gate the past couple weeks. So it's been really fun. Now, getting into the Brazilian Grand Prix, this is going to be really cool, Wes. And I don't know how much we've talked about this, but this is actually going to be a somewhat of a trial for F1. And what I mean by that is they are trying a different way of doing qualifying. So there was this problem that people were bringing up to F1 that basically said two things. One, that qualifying really, as simply put as it can be, rewards the fastest car on the track. And then if you put those fastest cars in the front of the actual race, I mean, theoretically, that car is just going to drive away from it, right? So they were having that issue where people felt that the races were very processional. It was who was in started in first, ended in first, and so on. The other thing that it's they wanted to, or people kind of mentioned, was that you have this whole weekend affair, right? So qualifying starts on, I believe, is it Wednesday or Thursday, Wes? I think it's Thursday.
Thursday,
So
yep.
yeah, qualifying traditionally starts on third. Well, practice, and then you have qualifying, and there are 3 rounds of qualifying, and the third round is on Saturday, and then Sunday you race. And what was happening is they really weren't getting the reach out of spectators and fans Thursday through Saturday in qualifying. So what do? They try to find a way to get more people to pay attention, to mix up how the grid might look come race day, and they introduced the sprint race for qualifying. So the reason this is really exciting and why it makes this weekend so cool, and they've actually done this already this year, but this is one of the few times they're giving it another try, is that you're going to have a practice session, and then you're going to have one, I believe it's one qualifying round, or it might be two. But then they're going to take those qualifying, and on Saturday, they're going to do a sprint race, which is a much shorter race than the actual race itself. So let's say instead of 70 laps, they do 20 laps. And basically everyone gets out there and they race for 20 laps. And how that ends is how, the grid looks come Sunday. And so that's going to be really exciting to watch. There's enough crazy stuff going on around F1, just with the standings, with the teams, and with each individual driver. But to throw in a change of scenery with these sprint races, I mean, it's hard to say. Who knows what happens. And another thing that goes into it, and this once again, it just touches on just how close these standings are. But these sprint races, no one really wants to hurt their car, because if you affect your car, you might have some damage going into Sunday on the race. So people are still playing it pretty close, but they also want to move up 1 or 2 spots for when it comes actual race time on Sunday. So it's gonna be really fun to watch. I wish I could watch it live on Saturday, but I'll have to definitely get the recap, or record it and watch it at a later time.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing I want to touch on, just going to Brazil, is not only is Verstappen running away with the drivers' championship, but just checking the team championship. And this is kind of interesting. We're looping back into last week. Currently, Mercedes has 478 points, and Red Bull has 477 points. And
Mhm.
why I think this is really interesting is at the end of last week's race, we saw Bottas come on and put soft tires on with just a few laps to go to try to get fast lap. And if you have the quickest lap of the race, you actually get a single extra point. And what that essentially did is, going into that point, Verstappen had the fastest lap of the race.
Right.
Bottas got it the very last lap. The team championship would have been flipped around this week if it wasn't for him putting on those soft tires and putting down that last lap.
Right. And to touch on that just real quick, I actually believe Botas does not get the point in that situation. What he does do is he takes it away from Verstappen. So
Okay.
Max had it, but I believe you only get the point if you finish within the top 10.
Okay.
But I could be wrong about that. But nonetheless, they took that point away from Max, and that's proving to make a difference in the overall standings.
Yeah, I thought that was crazy, but Brazilian Grand Prix, 2 p.m. this week. Um, Everyone listening to this, get on there and check it out. F1's a
Definitely.
real deal, and the more time you spend understanding it and learning, the more interesting it is. So it kind of
Definitely.
would make more sense when we get on here and we talk about every single week. So definitely a lot of fun. Check it out. But let's go ahead, and I want to move into the locks of the week. And I do want to touch on our performance from last week. We had a great performance last week.
Beautiful.
So, yep, 3 out of 3 if you look at our individual locks and then also our parlay. Just to touch on that again, we had Chargers -2, Patriots -3.5. And for our last pick in the pitiful parlay, we took the over on the Chargers Eagles games. And what that led to is we went ahead and put $75 down. And we actually cashed out $270. So
Bang.
we well made up for our last week when we lost every single pick, and we went from a starting pot of $200 to now we're at 319. So big last week, Jack. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm just excited to keep it going. Let's see if we can stay hot.
Fun stuff. We're gonna keep it rolling, and we're gonna take one of you guys to Miami last week or
I
next
love
year or Austin. We're dead set on doing it, but we got to have some success here with these picks. But let's go ahead. Let's move into week 10 of the NFL. Let's lock in our locks of the week. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Jack, to kick us off with the first lock, and I'll lock it in as we go.
Yeah, I had one lock in mind, and I've actually changed it over in the duration of this
Ooh.
recording. So I think you're gonna like this one actually.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna lock in lock of the week. Fuck the Patriots. Browns plus. I'm getting plus 1.5. What do you see?
You're taking the Browns plus 1.5. Let me pull it up. I have the Browns at +2.
Oh, I love it. Give me an extra half point. Lock it in, Wes. I'll take Browns +2. I think the Browns have showed week in, week out that they're a team that compete, whether they have every player on the field or they have some people sitting out. And going back to what I said about the Patriots, I'm not believers. To be honest, I like the value you get at the money line. But for the sake of it being a lock of the league, let's keep it at +2.
I like it. I like it. So Browns +2. We're betting $25 to win 47 3/4. So we'll go ahead
Make
and
it.
it is locked in for this week. All right, awesome stuff. So it's funny. I was just talking before the show how much I like that Browns game, but I'm not gonna let my fanhood get in the middle
We
of
just can't
a
do it.
solid decision. So I'm gonna go ahead and look past that game and just kind of browsing through the games. I didn't make it that far because I actually stopped at Thursday Night Football. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. We got the Ravens at the Dolphins, and currently the line is Ravens at -7.5. I kind of talked a little bit about Jack before this. It's to me this just seems easy money. So we got the Dolphins team that has progressively gotten worse. The Ravens team, which is just a good football team, one of the best teams in football. It's Thursday night. I expect Lamar Jackson to have some fireworks for us. To me, I don't see how the Ravens don't win this by 2 touchdowns. I think it's an easy lock. So I'm going to go, my lock of the week is Ravens at -7.5.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. I think, like I said earlier, you're going to see Lamar showing everybody why he's going to win MVP.
Nice. So that goes $25 bet for 48.80 is
There you
how
go.
much we would win. So that one's I went ahead and locked that in. Let's go ahead and look to this third pick. Jack, we'll go ahead, like always, let you kick off the conversation here. What are you seeing for the third leg of our pitiful parlay of this week?
Yep. So looking at it, we got the first two, third leg for our pitiful parlay. I'm thinking. So I've really actually liked the Eagles +2.5. They came out and they really contested the Chargers, and I say week in and week out, I like the Chargers. I think they're a great team. I think the Eagles are putting stuff together. Their offense has really shown that they can score the football. I don't think anybody can argue with that. And so I like them at +2.5. I'm not sold on the Broncos. Not sold on with Teddy Bridgewater. We'll see what Melvin Gordon does. I think the over here is also a good play. 45 seems a little low for these two teams. But like I said, I like the Eagles 2.5. I like the Packers -3. I like betting against the Seahawks. I've been doing it all year. And a team like the Packers, I'd be willing to keep going, whether they have Aaron Rodgers or not. Um, yeah, and outside of that, and the last one I'll say, we talked about this a little earlier. I'd love to see a +9 Falcon spread. I like the Falcons +9 a lot. I'm starting to worry a little bit about the Cowboys, and I think the opposite about the Falcons. They really kind of put things together the past few weeks.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things there. Green Bay, I'm not on the same page with you there because I don't think
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers will not be playing this week.
Right.
Um, I also have kind of just been betting against the Seahawks a lot, but I'm not seeing it this week. I think
Okay.
Russ it might be back this week as well, so that's something to add in there. Or
Okay.
I'm not 100% confident in that. Either way, I'm kind of staying away from that game. I talked too much crap on Jordan Love earlier. Um, I do like your Eagles pick at plus 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a solid choice. And the only thing that really stands out to me, other than that, is I don't hate the Chargers at minus 3.5 against the
Oh,
Vikings.
yeah.
I
I
don't know
could
if
be all
that's
for
something
that.
you. I don't know if that's something you're interested in. To me, it comes down to the two Eagles or Chargers. That's kind of where I'm at personally. But I'll go ahead. I want to let you make the last pick here. I mean, I kind of told you what I'm thinking. Where's your head at?
I the more I think about it, I mean, let's just keep riding with the Chargers. I loved them last week. I like them this week. The Vikings. I just think the Vikings can be weird. There are weeks they come out and they look really good offensively, and then some weeks they come out and they don't look so put together. I'd be interested to see how Dalvin Cook does this weekend with everything that's going on. I'm sure he's playing, but nonetheless, I mean, there's plenty going on. I'm sure some stuff is in his head. I'm all for Chargers -3.
Let's lock it in then.
All
I
right,
like that pick. So we got the Ravens at minus 7.5, the Cleveland Browns at plus 2.5, and then the LA
two even.
plus 2. My bad. And then the LA Chargers at minus 3. So if we lock that in for a $25 bet at plus 596 odds, we'll have a payout of $174. What do
Okay.
you think, Jack? You want to lock it
Hey,
in?
I say we lock it in, man. That's one step closer to getting at least one ticket to
All
my
right. Pitiful parlay of the week. Here
Ooh,
we go.
ooh,
It's locked in.
pitiful parlay.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, that's kind of a wrap on this week's show. So a couple things we touched on this week was around that engagement with you guys, making sure we're kind of having some conversations with you. So we are going to buy this racehorse, and we want to hear what you guys have to say. And then along with other things, we plan on dropping in on our Twitter page. So make sure to check that out at Be Back Podcast on Twitter. And then also make sure to subscribe subscribe to us on Spotify, and that's where you can find us weekly. We release every Thursday morning, so you'll be able to check us out tomorrow morning here. And then also follow our locks of the week. So if you have followed us last week, you'd be sitting pretty good right now. So
There it is.
make sure to check those locks out. So Jack, you got anything to wrap us up?
Yeah, one thing I'll just leave you on. Definitely get on the Twitters, like Wes said. We love the engagement. We love to get more people listening if possible. But just to kind of keep going, I'm excited to say, and I hope this is okay to bring up Wes just real quick. But I think we're looking at having somebody come on the podcast next week. I
Yep.
think we've talked about this a little before, and I'm really excited for it. I'm ready to hear another person's opinion. We're not going to quite let you know who that is just yet, but definitely tune in next week. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. It would be a good time. It'd be nice to have someone on so you guys can stop listening to our two dumbasses talk every week.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I got. So we'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys. Thanks. Holy shit, that was long.